All right, Ambassador Wendy Sherman is now being considered for Deputy Secretary of State after serving as Undersecretary of State for Obama, former President Obama, from 2011 to 2015. The question is she qualified for the position? Well, if we take a look at some of the downright dangerous foreign policies that came out of those 4 years, we can very quickly find our answer. But also, Sherman's record on abortion is enough to make anyone do a double take as to why she is being considered for this job. Joining me now to talk about this and his bill, bipartisan bill, I should say, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, is U.S. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back on.
Well, you outline in an op-ed your concern, the problems that you see with Sherman filling this high-level post in the Biden administration. What are the biggest red flags for you?
Well, I think you've highlighted some of them already, which is her previous service. But she's also, listen, she's a political operative who has served in diplomatic posts, but her political operative background comes into play. You see it become apparent in her service in the past, as, for example, the Iran deal, and as well as she was a sort of full-blown advocate for the old notion that somehow we should be doing more with China. She said in an op-ed piece that she wrote last summer, she viciously attacked the Trump administration on a host of issues, Cuba, Venezuela, which, by the way, in the hearing, she couldn't point out to what disagreements she had with those policies. But in the case of China, she says, well, we should be looking for ways to work with them on deals on things like climate change. China is the world's greatest polluter. I mean, last year alone, they built a historic number of coal plants, not to mention, financing them all over the world. And they've never signed a deal they've ever kept or not sort of walked away from and undermined. So there's a host of reasons, but I think that it all tracks back to one thing, and this is a liberal political operative operating inside of the State Department.
Well, one of the things that drew my attention in your op-ed was to the fact that she was one of the first directors of Emily's List, which is the most aggressive when it comes to electing individuals who have, an orthodox view of the left's policy on abortion. And the State Department has a history up until this last administration to exporting this liberal view of abortion, in fact, forcing it on other states when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, and by the way, when we talk about forcing it, it's conditioning funding on its availability and/or the direct the funding of it by getting rid of the Mexico City policy now that opens the door to that. Always, of course, under couched as reproductive services and women's health issues, but in fact, it's nothing but an effort to, as I said, promote and fund the performing abortions in other countries, and in many cases, in countries where that is still not widely accepted. They still hold traditional views on that issue.
I mean, I've talked to a number of those foreign ambassadors. I'm sure you've talked to more of them, especially during the Barack Obama years, whose arms were twisted, that they had to change their laws on abortion and even on marriage. They were forcing them to change their view of human sexuality as a condition for foreign aid from the United States.
Well, that's the exporting the cultural and social agenda of one part of the country on the rest of the world as part of our foreign policy, which at the core, our foreign policy is about protecting America's national interest, our national security, our alliances that contribute to our national security, and hopefully as well to the stability of countries so you don't have migratory crisis, you don't have wars, and you don't have the rise of terrorism. And that's the point of global diplomacy, not to take the political viewpoints of domestic policies and then superimpose them upon other cultures and countries. Now, democracy, that's a unifying principle. We can't impose democracy, we're supportive of it, but these are cultural issues that go right to the heart of the values of any country. We shouldn't be imposing those sorts of things.
We've seen one of the president's nominees, Neera Tanden, had to withdraw. Is there a chance we might see another one like Sherman have to withdraw because of the controversy surrounding her?
Well, unfortunately, I think the controversy is over issues that I don't think any Democrat's going to break on, and that's unfortunate. Honestly, I mean, I don't like the things that Neera Tanden put out there, but I think her nomination in terms of danger to the country is far. If you told me, one nominee was going to run into problems, I would have rather had that been, for example, this individual who's going to head the Department of Health and Human Services,
Right.
who has no background in health and human services, but does have a background as a woke social cultural warrior who has gone after religious entities like hospitals, two religiously based hospitals looking to merge, fighting against the federal government on the Little Sisters of the Poor, and those sorts of things. I'm very concerned about the power that agency has over so much of our lives. So I wish it had been that nomination instead.
Yeah, Javier Becerra. In fact, Senator, when you just passed, you didn't, but the Senate approved a $1.9 trillion relief bill to address the COVID-19, and we're told we're in such dire straits we need this, but yet this administration advancing an individual to head up our top health organization that doesn't have a lick of experience when it comes to health care.
No, but the power of that agency is extraordinary. So he was the Attorney General of California, and he fully utilized that office to fight the culture war, and I think we can anticipate the same. And it's unfortunate because faith-based organizations provide extraordinary contribution in our country to our healthcare systems. The first hospitals in the world were faith-based, and to this day in America, faith-based organizations provide community care, oftentimes to those who are the most vulnerable, the uninsured, the poor, and others, and I think there's a lot to be concerned about there.
Absolutely. Well, you've mentioned a lot about China. I want to shift to the issue of China because you've been leading for some time a bipartisan effort to address the forced labor issue in China with the Uyghur Muslims, where they are being interned into these labor camps, concentration camps, and forced into labor. To do labor without compensation. You have that bill has been reintroduced in this Congress, has it not?
It has, and it's unfortunate that we've got these corporations in America who are quietly but vociferous, but aggressively lobbying to keep it from happening. And you wonder why. They all claim they don't use forced labor, and yet you wonder whether at least some of their supply chain is linked to it as a result of it. I suspect the answer is probably yes, which is why they don't want the liability that comes with it. Look, it's a horrifying human rights violation of men and women who are not just being bad enough as it is that they're being forced into these camps to do labor. They're not just labor camps. They are designed to strip them of their religious and cultural identity. Yeah,
you're right. And I mean, we've seen the BBC recent reports of mass rapes. Just the things that are happening there. But I want to zero in on some. You brought something up that I don't want people to miss, and that was the role of U.S. business. Chamber of Commerce actually opposed the last version of this bill coming out. I was shocked that they would be so brazen as to oppose it. But China's most favored nation status was made permanent 20 years ago. And one of the arguments was that opening trade with China would allow America to export not only our products, but our values. And that was supposed to transform China into a nation that respected human rights. But now, 20 years later, it appears the U.S. is not only running a trade deficit with China, but a values deficit as well. China has impacted our business, our Fortune 500 companies, more than we've impacted them.
Well, it's worse than that, too. I mean, in addition, right, that's exactly right. They deputize companies. The price of doing business in China, the price of having access to their market is to come back to Washington and lobby policymakers in favor of their preferred policies. But it's also our movies. I mean, our movies, our entertainment is now being censored so that the content you can't, so that it can play in Chinese theaters because it's such a huge market. So it's infiltrated our universities in many cases, who have silent speakers on campus critical of China in order to not lose their multi-million-dollar partnerships over there.
And those same entities, Hollywood, these Fortune 500 companies, are lecturing us about social justice.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, you have the rise in America of an unelected oligarchy in academia, in entertainment, in media, and in corporate America. And every answer they have to every problem is about perpetuating that power and that wealth that they've created. But every time, every answer to every problem is something that's bad for working Americans. you name it, from climate change to social justice. It's something that either goes against the common sense wisdom, or the working class values of working Americans.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be tracking the Forced Labor Prevention Act, hopefully as it makes its way through the process.
Thank you.